everyone. Welcome back to the Nova Nihongo podcast. I'm your host, Tanner, and today we have a special guest. This is Niyah. So, everyone say hi to Niyah. And Niyah, would you introduce yourself for everyone?
So, hi everyone, I'm Naya. I am from the United States and I am a soon to be graduating law student. I know I'm 25 and I've been learning languages, teaching languages, etc., for so many years now. I grew up with English, Spanish, and American Sign Language and later went into learning German and French when I was around 14, I guess, was around that time. Throughout the years, I've dabbled in Portuguese, Russian, Italian, Japanese, etc., etc. These days, I'm pretty advanced in English, Spanish, French, German, American Sign Language with like an intermediate Brazilian Portuguese, and I've been learning a lot of Mandarin and Korean. So those are like my main focuses these days.
Dang, that's a lot. How do you juggle that much? That's crazy. Ugh, that's awesome.
I know.
It's just that I know I'm awesome.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot. I get it. I get it for sure. So today's topic is going to be about speaking anxiety and when you're first speaking a new foreign language, all that stuff. So, a lot of the time, when you're a beginner and you first learn to introduce yourself and everything, you get really excited, like, oh my god, I know something, like, that's great. So, there's a quick progression between knowing nothing and then knowing something. But then once you start actually working past just some basic phrases and sentences, a lot of the time that's when the anxiety comes up, which we know all too well. All too well. So, a lot of the time with beginners, they will freeze up and get really nervous and get anxious to speak for the first time or the first couple times, or in my case, the first like 4 years of Japanese, because I was terrified. So, Naya, is there something specific, like it could be a specific language or a specific time or whatever, that you remember freezing up and being scared to speak?
No, definitely. I will say, especially for German, it happened because I mostly, when I first started learning German, I was learning German on my own and kind of just putting the pieces together, figuring things out. And then I went to Germany a few times actually to visit my family over there. And I remember just being like, the first time I went, it was like a secret that I knew some German. I was like, I'm not gonna, nope, don't want them to try to make me do anything, don't want to say anything back, don't want to whatever. The second time I was a little bit better, but it was still a matter of like taking it all in and then not quite saying anything back. I remember someone being surprised that like I understood something that they said, and I was like, ah, yeah, mm-hmm. And I
Yeah.
do think there's a lot of like not wanting to mess up, not being confident in my pronunciation. If you know anything about German, you know like the cases can be all over the place.
Cases are rough.
Exactly. So like having to like kind of piece that together and like think about all of that in a sentence, I was like, yeah, I can't. Nope. The idea of putting your verbs at the end of the sentence, I was like, I this is great for writing because in writing I can like think it through and like change my mind halfway through. In speaking, not so much. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, no, I can definitely relate to the concept of like being afraid. I will say like even with Korean right now, very few times have I like had a conversation in Korean or even like put myself out there in Korean.
Me too.
Outside of reading out loud maybe, but yeah.
I so get it. Like German and Korean, both of those I study, and they're both killing me right now. I've literally had to take a pause on German because of the cases. I'm just like, I can't. My brain is not going to process this right now. We're going to come back to this. And then Korean, I've always had a mental block with Korean for some reason. Anybody who's a listener on here knows that. I'd always talk about it. But yeah, Korean has always been rough for me. So anything like that just I'm like, okay, I need to take a break and get back to it. So a lot of the time when things like that happen, I will just slow down. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to give up, but I will slow down. Definitely. Because I'll get so excited about the language and then I start speaking and then I'm like, ooh, that's a lot. So we slow down, but then we get back to it. So I think there is like a certain point. I don't know if it's a certain level or there's just something that happens when you're learning a language and it just kind of clicks all of a sudden, and then it's like it's between like upper beginner intermediate ish. I'm not going
Right,
to give
me
it like
too.
a certain
I would
level, I
say like
guess.
right when you see that switch from what they call like the A2 to B1 level of like all of a sudden it's like, wait, actually, I can kind of do this. Like, I don't
Yeah.
need to stop and look at a book every time I'm thinking of something. Like, I don't have to go back and look at the grammar. I can convey my thoughts, even if they're
Yeah.
very basic. It's like, I could do this.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I had that with Portuguese within the last year or so. So my Portuguese has gotten a lot better recently because something has clicked, and I'm like, oh, like when you get a new word or a new verb or whatever, it's not necessarily like you have to like break it all down and all that. You just realize the pattern, and you're just like, is it this? And my tutor's like, yeah, there you go. I'm like, okay, cool. So you start understanding the patterns of the language a little bit more, so you can just kind of go a little bit easier. So that's about when I hit that point and then I progress beyond that and I get better, that's when I consider myself conversational enough. I'm not gonna obviously not gonna say fluent, but conversational enough and comfortable enough to be like, okay, I see what's happening. This is making sense. And I've had enough conversations and stuff to where I'm like, I'm not like drowning or trying to figure out what I'm supposed to say next. Like it's starting to come a lot naturally. It's really weird and I don't fully know how to describe it other than magical. But there's like a certain click that happens when you get there, and that's kind of where the speaking just starts coming very naturally, and you're like, oh wow, this is great, and then it makes you want to learn something again, and then you hit a mental block, and then you're stuck in a cycle forever. Yeah,
That is the journey of the language learner.
it is. It is, and it never stops. It never ends. But it turns out to be good. Turns out to be good later. So, have you ever like had a specific moment of speaking where you just completely screwed everything up and you just had to laugh at yourself?
It's actually so funny. So during the pandemic, I was on a podcast with another friend because she was doing a podcast at the time. And I remember she was like in Germany at the time. So she was really excited. She was like, we're going to start this off in German. And I was like, oh yeah, cool, bet. And it's so funny because I remember I got it wrong and I knew it immediately. And then she knew it. And we kind of just looked at each other and we're like, let's just move on in English. Um, and it was like so funny. It was like the most basic things, which what like I knew it. Like my German was like pretty good at that point, but it was just like I was so out of practice with it. So when she like started, she asked me something, and I think part of it was also like the sketchy connection. And I just remember she asked me something. It was so simple, like one of those like basic introduce yourself type things. And she asked me the question, and I answered the wrong question. And I just remember it was just, oh my gosh, I still think to this day. I was like, wow, this is so funny that she didn't even cut it out.
Are you serious? That's hilarious. Oh, I don't even know. Like, I've had that so many times with Japanese, like so many times. I can't even count. Like with my friends. I think the main one is I was in Japan 2 years ago with my best friend, and we were at Baskin Robbins, or 31 as they call it over there, and we were getting ice cream, and I was ordering normally in Japanese, and like just talking politely to the server, and just whatever, it was fine. And Natsuki looks at me and goes, "That was weird." I'm like, "What do you mean that was weird? Did I say something wrong?" She's like, "No, I don't like it. I just don't like it." I'm like, what did I do? Did I screw something up? Did I say it wrong? Like, correct me if I did something wrong. She's like, you weren't wrong. I just don't like it. You speak English. I'm like, yes, but I also speak Japanese. That's how I met you. She's like, no, I don't like it. I'm like, you're an idiot. I can't. I didn't even do anything wrong. I didn't say anything wrong. I was polite. I did it right. And she's just like, I don't like it. It's wrong. It's just wrong. I'm like, okay, can't win. Just can't win. That's how you know you have a best friend versus a friend. My friends would like hype me up and be like, your Japanese has gotten so much better. I'm like, I know. And then Natsuki's just like, no, just no. I'm like, okay, can't win. But I don't know. There have been a couple times where I would like full on make a mistake in public, and my friends would just be like, that was funny. Good job. I'm like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's funny. It wasn't anything like offensive or whatever, but I'm just like, I would use like the wrong tense of a verb or something. They're just like, did you actually do that yesterday? I'm like, no, I didn't mean to. So
That
it's,
was me and my family. Like, I was with my German family, and we went to Paris for a week. And it was like during the 14th of July parade, so we would like went for the whole parade and everything. And then it was nighttime, so we were heading back to our hotel. and we got like a little like confused because we were kind of following the crowd at first. So we were like, okay, wait, so where are we now? I remember like I went up to my family sent me over because apparently I had best French in the group. This is before I got like really good at French. This is still like intermediate French, Naya. So it's like I go up and I'm trying to ask like because you know like Paris is set and they have like the different neighborhoods. So I knew that our hotel was in the 15th, and for the life of me could not remember how to say 15th in French. And I'm going to this man and I'm asking him where the 50th one is, and he's looking at me and he's like, "What are you talking about?" It's like we
I
don't
hate that.
none of that.
I hate that. That's awful. I can't stand, like, whenever I learn a new language and everything, I always skip numbers. I can't
hmm
stand numbers. I usually come back to it later, but like when I first start learning, I'm like, I don't want to learn numbers. I don't want to know any of this. I just want to learn how to actually say what I did today. I don't care what number it is. I'll do that later.
I just need the numbers that are like pertinent to me, and then figure out the rest of them later.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll learn maybe 1 through 10 at
Yep.
first, but maybe even then I'll put it away. Like I'll put it till later. Because Indonesian I'm working on right now, and I'm not touching numbers right now. I'm just like
There's
no.
some languages where like numbers are easy, especially like once you get into the Romance languages and kind of just not French, but like the rest of them, they kind of match up, so you can kind of keep going from there. That's easy. I know like Chinese numbers, they were really easy.
Japanese is easy.
And then
Yeah,
Korean has
other
two,
than counters.
and then Korean has the two different number systems. So I was like, yeah, we'll wait.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, I haven't really messed with Korean numbers very much either. At
The
least
ones I need for the
not
date, that's all I got.
right. Yeah, I haven't really messed with Korean numbers that much. I did the first like number set, like hana do set net daso yoso, like all those.
Yeah.
But then like the second one, I'm like, huh, no, not doing that right now. Which I mean, I know Japanese has technically two different ones, but at least with those, you can kind of be like, okay, here's the different one for like the counter, but we use this for all numbers no matter what if it's not a counter. Korean is just like, let's flip a coin. I'm like, no, thank you. I'm good. So I'm like, not doing that right now. So pausing.
Yes.
But yeah, Portuguese is easy, especially when it's coming from something that's close to your native. So that's pretty simple for the most part. So, okay. Well, do you remember, like, this could be years and years ago, because I kind of remember mine, I'm not sure. Do you remember the first time you spoke one of your more advanced languages?
Outside of like just in class practice type thing, or
Yeah, like actually in use.
let's see, I would say for French, it was right after I took like the first level of high school French. If anyone knows anything about America's school systems and the whole language learning thing, that's basically
Awful.
not learning French for a year. I didn't learn French for a year, and then I spent a day in Strasbourg with my German family that summer. And once again, they were like, "You're learning French." Really, like cheering me on. They were hyping me up. They were like, "We're in the grocery store. We're looking for the macarons. Can you ask the lady at the bakery where they are?" And I was like, "Seems simple enough. I know how to say where. I know how to say are, and you just gave me macaron. All right." And I did. And then she gave me the response, and I was like, you guys did not set me up to listen to the answer. Didn't have that ready. But I did, and it's so funny. They recorded me. Like, we have a video of me asking where the macarons were in the French grocery store.
Whoa.
And I was so proud of myself. I was like, I did it. I did the French stuff. It was great. Yes.
Still don't know where they are, but I still said it.
Yeah, yeah. I followed her hand motions. I was like, she said something about we were in this direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. I love that. I think for me, this was 2020, so yeah, back in pandemic. I started learning Japanese like on my own, like fully, and then I actually spoke with a tutor. And all I remember, like obviously I remember we did like a lot of grammar and vocabulary and stuff. All I remember conversation wise was like I learned to introduce myself, which was cool. But then the first like actual question I asked, like she had like gone out of town or something, and I asked her how her vacation was, and I used the wrong tense. I definitely used the wrong tense. It was like how was your break? So yasumi wa do deshita ka is the right way to say it. Do deshita is the past tense. I said do desu ka, which is present tense, and she's like, "Girl, I wish I was still there. What do you mean?" I'm sorry. She wasn't upset, of course, but she had a moment. She's like, I don't want to be back here. Why'd you have to remind me? I'm like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Something like that. It was funny. But yeah, that was 6 years ago, which is weird. But yeah, sometimes when you have your first conversation, it's exciting, but mistakes are normal, and that's okay. It
Absolutely.
sucks, but it's okay. It's crazy.
It's a part
So
of life. Like you said, we
go
can
ahead.
look back at it now and like joke and laugh about it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah. So, have you ever used like any kind of like speaking apps or anything to find some speaking partners?
I have actually. I actually still like to this day I keep Hello Talk and Tandem on my phone at all times.
Me too.
Like at one point I had the pro versions of both of them. I think that was probably during the pandemic when everyone was super active and everything, so it was super easy to find people back then. I liked, especially on Hello Talk, I liked going into the speaking rooms more just because they also had a chat. I don't like that Tandem doesn't have the chat option.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
yeah, because if you're not like in the group talking, you can't participate at all.
Hmm.
And also I like it because sometimes you'll be having a conversation and like someone uses a word and it's like, "Oh, how's that spelled?" And they can like type it in the chat so you can know.
Yeah.
Um, and like I understand why Tandem doesn't do it, like, trying to really reinforce the only speaking, but it's yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I definitely prefer Hello Talk also. Yeah, I've talked to some people on there. It's not as, I guess, long term connections are hard to do on there, but for the most part, it's good for a couple quick little conversations or whatever. I need to use it more for sure. I've kind of fallen off recently, but especially, back in the pandemic, I was on top of it. So it was a lot of fun, but lately I've just been taking online lessons with tutors and stuff, italki lessons, preply lessons, things like that. And I just, for some of my more advanced languages, I take just conversation lessons. But then
Mhm.
obviously beginner, I'm like, hey, help, I don't know how to say anything. So those will help too. But yeah, my
Absolutely.
Portuguese lessons, I've had the same tutor for a while, and she's actually become one of my best friends. I've been doing that for a long time, but for the most part, our lessons have kind of morphed into just conversation lessons because we did a lot of grammar with a textbook and working with that for a while. But I mean, I was with her for so long that I progressed with her into just some conversation lessons for the most part. She'll teach me like some grammar, we'll work with like some like irregular verbs or stuff because, irregular verbs, those are hard sometimes, so she'll help me out with those. But otherwise, there are a lot of conversation lessons. So she helps me like talk about how the week went, how my weekend was, all of this stuff in Portuguese. So it's been really helpful. Definitely recommend italki and preply for those things. So yeah, do you take a lot of speaking lessons and stuff?
So I actually don't do a lot of like actual taking lessons and stuff. I am a student, so I do not have the funds to be paying for different options and things like that.
That's fair.
I just also learned what works for me and how to do it on my own a lot. So that's kind of just what works better for me because then I can kind of figure things out. I do try to look for language partners to practice for free when I can. And like I said, during the pandemic, it was super easy because it was everything from like Hello Talk and Tandem to I was in like different Facebook groups that were really active at the time for language learners. So it was me like being able to help other people. I was like teaching Spanish to a bunch of people at some point and then like hosting like a Spanish group call where we would practice Spanish together. And I ended up with one friend from there. You've probably met her, Jacqueline. She's on
Yeah,
Instagram. She does challenges and stuff with us too.
she's great.
We met during the pandemic on like Facebook and Instagram mix, and we had started doing like a weekly call in Spanish, and
Oh,
we still do it. So we are 6 years strong with keeping up with our weekly calls, and our calls have
nice.
gotten a lot longer. And we've like added in the idea of like reading a book together. So we're like reading a book in Spanish and talking about the book, keeping up with it. And starting last year, we actually ended up doing a thing where because she's pretty good at Chinese and she's been learning Japanese as well, but she wanted to learn French and I wanted to pick up Chinese again. So we did a thing where she started learning French and I started learning Chinese again. And part of our call weekly is to do a little bit of practice with that And sometimes it's super simple, like most recently, because she had gotten a little more busy, so she couldn't fully focus on learning French right now. But she does have like a book that she's like a short story book for beginner type thing, where she'll just send me a screenshot of the pages and she'll go through and just read it out loud and just practice the pronunciation. And then I have her like go through sentence by sentence and figure out the meaning, and I kind of like walk her through it and like let her try to figure it out herself. And then I read it to her so that she can hear a better pronunciation and hear it, with the right inflections and things like that. So we do that back and forth. And then we do the same thing with Mandarin, since a lot of my issue, when I was coming back into Mandarin was that character recognition. There was a lot of characters and words that I had learned the first time around that I just was not recognizing them. It would always be a matter of like, this looks kind of familiar. What is this? So we've been doing a lot of focus on like the Mandarin Companion series where they make sure that they're only using characters that I know and like a few new ones here and there. And then the stories are really funny and engaging. So it's me practicing like just reading Mandarin characters out loud, practicing that pronunciation, practicing recognition and things like that. And then so yeah, so we do kind of that, and then we'll like text each other little conversations sometimes in Mandarin and French if like either of us learn something new that week, and it's like I just want to practice asking this question, and like so it's really cute because we both understand where we're coming from, so it makes it just really nice and easy, and we don't have to have that fear when we're talking to each other. We can be really random.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's awesome. I love that 6 years strong. I love that. That's great. I think those are just great ideas in general to use, like making like kind of a language learning book club of some kind that you guys have. It's really cute. I really like that. I think like I've actually had an idea of doing something similar to that, of having like a big group of people and we all read the same book, but in whatever language we want.
Fun.
So yeah, I thought about doing that. So if anyone wants to do that, comment and say that you want to. So we'll try and do something like that.
Absolutely. Were you
Yeah, I
involved
think
in the language bloom that we're doing in March right now?
not this month. I haven't had much time. March is always a crazy month for me.
I know.
But I loved the language blizzard that we did. I loved doing that. It was terrifying. It applies to what we were talking about too. It was a whole speaking challenge that we did back in December, and it was terrifying because I wanted to challenge myself because I'm like, I could do the Japanese version in my sleep. That's easy. I'm like, we're gonna do Portuguese this time. Get my confidence up in something other than that. It's terrifying, and I don't like posting videos of me speaking very much on Instagram or online in general, but we did it, and I think it was really great. So Naya and Tiara both do some really great challenges, so if you guys are interested in something like that, we'll put the link to their pages both in the description. Definitely support them and their challenges because they're great.
Yeah. And like speaking of the challenges, it's part of why we do it is so that it can like be used for any level of language learning.
Mm-hmm.
So even for me, like it was me doing it in Korean and Chinese, and like I said, I have not reached that point of talking in either of those languages. Chinese maybe a little more so than Korean, but the way that it works is that like you don't have to free talk. You can free talk if that's the challenge that you have for yourself. But I was doing things like I would write it ahead of time and I would, make sure I felt comfortable with what I wrote, kind of a thing. And then I would just read it out loud. Didn't even try to memorize it half the time. It was like, and I do remember like later in the month when I was like trying to like zip through the rest of them because I fell behind a little bit. I do remember a couple of them for Korean and Chinese. I was like, no, I'm going to memorize this. We're just going to say it. And whatever I say is it's already recorded and being posted, so we're not changing it. And
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
yeah, but it was like a progression thing. That's why it's fun that you're doing like that 30 days of consistency because you do slowly get more comfortable.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I loved the speaking challenge. It was terrifying, but I loved it. I loved how we had like different levels that we
Hmm.
could do and you could choose for which day that you felt more comfortable or not so based on the topic or whatever. I love doing things like that cuz some days I'd be like, "Oh, I actually know the hardest topic. Let's do that." And then other days I'm like, this is purple. I like purple. I'm like doing the basic things because I'm like, I don't know how to say the rest of this stuff. So we're gonna.
And that's
try
what
something
makes it
else.
fun is that we try to like build the questions in ways that even if you're a beginner wanting to answer the hardest question, you don't have to give us a very scientific spiel. You know, you can answer this in very simple phrases if you would like to, or you can only say one sentence and that can be your answer. You know, there's no rules. It's just whatever feels right to you, whatever makes you think back and go, I practiced today.
I love stuff like that. I created like a Discord channel for a lot of language learners and stuff, and I'm hoping to get a lot more challenges up and everything, so we can coordinate something fun. So I really like that. I love the way that you guys do your stuff, so it's really cool.
Yeah.
So things like that, challenges online and Instagram, YouTube, anything like that can really help with your speaking for sure. It's a matter of just practicing and trying to get comfortable. It's gonna be difficult, especially in the beginning, but it can happen. So last thing that I want to bring up is accent anxiety. If anyone is unfamiliar, a lot of languages have different dialects or different accents that you can use, and I've always kind of felt weird trying to imitate somebody else's accent. But if you're doing it in the language, I mean, that helps your pronunciation too. So it gets a little hard to tell if you're doing it right or not sometimes because it makes you nervous. But then it it ultimately makes things better. It really does. I know something that happened to me recently. Um, Portuguese wise, I actually am learning the Rio de Janeiro dialect of Portuguese. So I actually talked to a friend that lives in Sao Paulo, and I started pronouncing things the Rio way, and she looked at me like I was crazy. And she's like, "What in the world are you saying?" And I'm like, "Oh, I forgot. I forgot that's a thing." So I had to tell her, I'm like, I've been learning Rio dialect." She's like, "Oh, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, now I know what you were saying." I'm like, "Okay, so I was doing the accent right. That wasn't the problem. It was just the accent, not barrier, but difference between the two that kind of made it a little weird." So that was funny. But yeah, have you ever had anything like that happen with trying a new accent?
Yeah, 100%. I think, and like before I like fully answer that, I was gonna tell you it's like a thing that happens even for us as like as English speakers where like in the US we have different words for things, we have different pronunciations and spellings for different words than in Britain and things like that. And I remember it was like I was with my German mom and she was looking at her she keeps a book of like new words that comes up in English and like how to pronounce them or like new phrases that she learns and she was like showing me this book because she like had saw this phrase and she tried to use it while we were playing a board game and she said it and I was like what is that? It's like I was like I don't know what you just said. Never heard this a day in my life. And then she showed it to me in her book and she was like, "Look, I have it written down. I wrote it down like this." And I was like, "Must be British." So I'm not going to tell you it's wrong. I'm just going to tell you
Yeah,
you'll never hear me say it. Um,
yeah, yeah. Britain English and Australian English, and then even in the U.S., we have so many different things.
I know.
Northern versus Southern. Like I live in Tennessee, so I have more Southern English. I don't have like a Southern accent, but I grew up in Memphis, so I kind of have more of a hood accent sometimes especially when I get mad. So there's a lot of difference. More recently, my dance teacher, he's from Memphis, and one of my friends who grew up in like North Carolina or something too, um, she's just like, "What is he saying?" He'll say slang and stuff that she's never heard before. Like "junt" is a very Memphis word, so I know exactly what he's saying because I'm used to that type of slang, that type of Memphis drawl that he has or whatever. And she's just like, "What are we doing next? What's the next move? What did he say?" I'm just like, "Okay, this is what we're doing." So it was just funny. It makes me laugh. I'm like, well, even within the South region of the US too, it's like a mix of accents and slang and everything, and it's probably completely different than what they're doing up in the north in like Washington State or something like that. So I'm like, okay, this is just wild.
Yeah, no, 100%. I grew up in Philly as well as the surrounding suburbs of Philly. And what that means is several of the suburbs, you're going to get different accents. So, like Philly, there's like suburbs like a little north of us, and then there's like the more western suburbs. So, like one of them is like the Delco, Delaware County. There's a very specific Delco accent, and you know a Delco accent when you hear a Delco accent if you're from the Philly area. And then
Yeah,
there's like the Philly accent, which can be the broad Philly, but we can also tell if you're from North Philly or South Philly, et cetera, et cetera. And then like the regular like suburban accent. But I recently moved to the other side of the state, so I'm in Pittsburgh now, and
hmm,
they talk completely different.
yeah,
Their grammar is insane. The way that they pronounce words throws me off sometimes. Like, it's so funny. It was like, and we're in the same state. So, like, you're talking about like the difference between like just being in the South, being in the same state, and like I said, being in the same city. You can tell the differences.
definitely.
So, yeah, like, definitely having that concept of like growing up code switching a lot because, depends on like where you are, what you're doing, what the vibes are, and then like for me like having like the language influence, sometimes a full accent is going to jump out on my English, and you just never know what you're going to get. But yeah, so speaking on like learning other languages and dealing with accents, I think for me something that was definitely just a plus was the fact that I grew up code switching so much in English, anyways. And then when it came to Spanish, I was around Spanish speakers from so many different places that you pick up on different things. And I can never, like, I don't say that I speak a specific dialect of Spanish or anything like that because my influence was so rich in so many different ways that I kind of code switch even when I'm speaking Spanish. And it was actually really funny. I was actually interpreting for a legal clinic last week, and each time a new caller jumped on the call, they were from a different place. So, we had someone that was from Mexico, and I immediately heard it. I was like, Mexico, know this one. And it was like
Yeah,
just the way that she's like rolling her R's and the way that she's pronouncing the eye and like things like that. You can hear it. And then we had another caller. She comes on the line and she's like talking. And at first, when she first started talking, I was like, what's this lady saying? I was like, because there's a few dialects of Spanish that give me pause, and it's always going to be the Venezuelans, Chileans, and Spain, and I forget what the other one is. I can't think of it right now. But like those ones are usually the ones that are gonna like I'm gonna have to pause for a second and like reroute my brain before I can finish this conversation. So it's like when she started talking, I was like, all right, she's from one of the four. I was like, where are you from? And she was like, Venezuela. And I was like, yep, yeah,
knew
that'll
it.
do it. I was like, that will do it. Cause yeah, even her numbers were throwing me off. I was like, she was just trying to like give numbers and like the way she was pronouncing them, I was like, ma'am, what?
Weird. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it would be numbers too. That's crazy. I thought that would be something we could all connect on in the same language.
Be the safest, and it was not. Another I am part of like me where I had like a little bit more. So when I was in French class, and one thing I will say I really loved that my high school did do with our high school French that we did was that they were very intentional on making sure that we were hearing all of the different dialects of French. We did not focus just on France's French. We got to really listen and learn more about the different dialects within France. So, like, understanding that in Paris, you're going to speak a little different than Southern France and different than the rest of Northern France, and that the Montreal accent and the Montreal words are going to be a lot different than what they're doing over in France as well. And then we went over into like a lot of the African countries that speak French, and we were making sure that we were hearing that and getting all of those different things in. And I just remember one summer, it was the summer that I went to Paris for a week with my German family. And then, so I was in Germany for a month, went to Paris for a week, went back to Germany for a couple of days, went to the States for a couple of days, and then went to Montreal. So within a 2 week span, switching over from Paris to Montreal. Yeah, so I remember the very first day in Montreal, I was like, I don't understand these people. And I was with a friend that didn't speak any French. She was like, weren't you just in Paris speaking French? And I was like, it's a lot different here. By day
Hmm.
two, I was okay. By day two, I was fine. But day one, I was like, yeah, I don't really know what they're saying.
Yeah,
And I remember
takes some
being stopped on the
adjusting.
street by someone, and like I was speaking to them, and they were like, "You sound European when you speak," and I was like, "We'll fix that. No worries." Give me day three. Day three, we were there.
There you go. There you go. I mean, you may sound European because you were learning, European French
Well, I
instead.
had like acclimated to the Paris French because even when I went to Paris, like when I first started, I didn't jump straight into like Parisian French. It was like, oh, the French I learned in school. And then we were there for like 2 days at first, and it was like, okay, now I'll blend into what we're doing here. So it's like I had just got comfortable with the Parisian French, and then to switch right over, I think if there was at least more of a break between the two trips, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Yeah, it took me a minute to get used to Japanese. Like when I first went over there, like the first day, I was just so brain dead that I'm just like, I just can't do it. But then, like through the rest of the trip, I was completely fine. So it took me a minute. So yeah,
There's
it's
always
just
like a buffer day
weird.
or two.
Yeah, definitely. Just to adjust and not necessarily a culture shock because sometimes like if you're a language learner, you prepare yourself for the culture shock so it's not as bad, you know? But I mean, the first day you're just like, "Hold on. Let my brain work
Hmm.
for a second and then we'll do it." So, yeah, it's a whole weird thing sometimes. So, I definitely get it. I'm very glad that my main dialect in Portuguese is Rio because I think for the most part, the Brazilian dialect, like Sao Paulo area and everything, is pretty standard. And then Rio just said, hey, let's do something weird, something different. And it's actually more fun for me anyway. So glad that I have both of those. Japanese kind of did the same thing when I was in college, where they taught obviously the Tokyo dialect, the standard dialect, but then my teacher was from Osaka, so she taught us a couple things there for that. But where I learned most of my Kansai Ben was from my friends that lived in Osaka when they came over here. So I mean, that's how I learned my Kansai Ben that I speak now. So, and I obviously know both because I teach both when I'm teaching Japanese, but Kansai Ben is the main one that I actually use when I'm speaking with my friends because it's actually fun for us to do Kansai Ben. So I like doing that. So I think different dialects and different accents are really important when you're speaking, just so you can get acclimated to more of the culture than you already are, you know?
Hmm.
So it just kind of expands a little bit more and just it's a good way to have fun with it. So I really like learning the different accents and different ways of speaking things. Okinawan Japanese is very different than standard, so that's on my list for later to learn. It's almost like a completely different language sometimes because they just use completely different words. So I'm just like, all
Yeah.
right, so that's on my list. Yeah, at some point. Then also there are some other mini dialects and everything, and there are actually a couple endangered languages in Japan that I want to mess around with. So I think I just want to know everything about Japan, just everything I can.
Hmm.
So yeah, I didn't think that French in Paris versus Canada was so different. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's really interesting. It's so funny because the more you look into it, you'll see there's a lot of stories of like French Canadians where they only speak French. They'll go over to France to like visit and they'll try to start speaking French and the French people assume they're Americans and don't speak English like they speak English and they're like, "Oh, I don't know what you're saying. Let's switch to English." And the French Canadians are like, "No, no, this is my native language. Like, don't
Yeah.
switch."
Yeah. Interesting. Hmm. I don't know very much about French, so I need to look into it. But yeah, I've never been huge on obviously like romance languages are not my main forte. It's more Asian languages, but I mean, I know a few things about romance, so French will be on my list to at least research and look into. Whether I speak it or not, that's a whole other conversation, but at least look into it and see. So, yeah. Well, that's great. So, I think we have some good takeaways from this episode of being afraid to speak is completely normal. Don't let it
Yes.
bring you down, but then you'll have some hilarious stories to share about it later. So don't give
Yes.
up.
Yep.
That's the
Just do
idea.
it.
Just do it. Any Stray Kids fans knowing, do it, do it. Anyway, I will just start yapping about Stray Kids. Okay, anyway, before I start yapping about Stray Kids, thank you, Naya, for coming on. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I am Study with Naya, and you said you were gonna put it in the chat, so I won't have to spell it.
Yes, I will put it in the description.
Okay, but yeah, Study with Naya is my Instagram. That is pretty much all I use. I do have a YouTube channel, but it has not been updated in forever. But there are some fun videos that you can look on if you're interested. That's also Study with Naya. Yeah.
Awesome. So all those links will be in the description. So you can connect with Naya, follow her, subscribe to our podcast channel, all that good stuff. All that will be in the description. So Yeah, thank you, Naya, for coming on and having a chat with me for a little while. And thank you to
Absolutely.
everyone for listening and tuning in. So, yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.